Declared primitive. The council chamber of the Galactic Alliance was built to inspire awe and intimidation. A cathedral of metal and light, its dome ceiling shimmered with projections of every star in the known galaxy, each point of light representing a world under Alliance protection. The delegates sat in tiered rings, hundreds of alien species in a riot of shapes, colors, and biologies, all watching the small human delegation as though they were some curious animal that had wandered in from the wilderness. For Captain Elias Reeve, commander of Earth's first FTL diplomatic vessel Odyssey, it was a moment he had dreamed of since his first days in the space program. Humanity had finally reached the heart of galactic civilization. This was supposed to be the day Earth was welcomed into the great family of advanced species, the day the human race stepped into the light of the stars as equals. But the welcome never came. Instead, the council speaker, a tall, glass-skinned Saithai whose voice rang like chimes in a storm, looked down at the humans with the same expression a scientist might use when observing mold. By unanimous vote, the speaker declared, "The species known as Homo sapiens is hereby classified as Level 0, pre-ascendant, non-integrated, and unfit for participation in high-order technological exchange." Gasps rippled through the human delegation. Elias's jaw clenched as the word sank in. Level 0 was the lowest possible classification, reserved for races deemed too primitive, too violent, or too unstable to handle advanced technology responsibly. It was a label that came with hard restrictions: no FTL warships, no energy weapons, no access to the Alliance's vast archives of scientific knowledge. The human dream of joining the galactic stage had just been shattered in front of every major civilization in existence. The justifications were delivered like a knife being slowly twisted. "Your species engages in constant interplanetary conflict," the speaker continued, "has yet to achieve stable planetary unity, and exhibits dangerously unpredictable behavioral patterns. The Council has determined that granting your kind unrestricted access to advanced technology would pose a significant risk to interstellar stability." Laughter rippled through parts of the chamber, a low, mocking sound from species whose empires stretch across hundreds of star systems. Elias felt heat crawl up his neck as a realization struck. They weren't just denying humanity entry, they were humiliating them. Dr. Lian Chen, Earth's chief science envoy, stepped forward to protest, her voice steady despite the cold fury in her eyes. "With respect, Speaker, the human race has ended world wars, eradicated dozens of diseases, and developed spaceflight in under a century. We've crossed the void between stars to stand here today. If that is primitive, then perhaps the word means something different in your language." Her words were met with polite, perfunctory silence. The decision had already been made long before the Odyssey had even entered Alliance space. When the session adjourned, the human delegation was left to stand in the echoing emptiness of the chamber as the alien delegates filed out, their robes trailing across the polished floor, their voices drifting away in 100 different languages. The Alliance had no interest in human achievements, only in human limitations. To them, Earth was a backwater world of dangerous animals, barely worth the effort of cataloging. Elias's hands curled into fists. They didn't see the wars humanity had fought and won against impossible odds. They didn't understand the way humans thrived in chaos, how they innovated under pressure, how they turned scarcity into strength. To the Alliance, humanity was nothing, a footnote in a galaxy of giants. Back aboard the Odyssey, Elias stared out at the capital world's glittering orbital skyline, a lattice of habitats and shipyards stretching for thousands of kilometers. He should have felt small. Instead, a slow, cold fire lit in his chest. "They'll regret this," he muttered under his breath. "One day, they'll see exactly what primitive means." He didn't know then that the galaxy's greatest nightmare was already stirring beyond the rim, an enemy that would sweep aside the great powers of the Alliance like dust in the wind. When that day came, the only species ready to fight back would be the one they had tried so hard to keep in the shadows. Humanity's reckoning was coming, and Elias intended to make sure the galaxy remembered it for the rest of time. The enemy awakens. The first rumors came as garbled distress calls from outlying mining colonies near the galactic rim, transmissions filled with static, abrupt screams, and then silence. At first, the Alliance dismissed them as pirate raids or environmental disasters, the kind of misfortunes that occasionally struck fringe settlements. But the pattern grew impossible to ignore. Entire systems were going dark. Patrol fleets sent to investigate vanished without so much as a final signal. Trade routes that had been safe for centuries suddenly became graveyards of drifting ships and shattered habitats. In the vast corridors of Alliance intelligence, whispers began to circulate about something old, something the archives had recorded only in fragmentary legends from the first cycle of galactic civilization. The Vorash. For humans, the name meant nothing at first. To the Alliance's older species, it was the stuff of ancient terror. The Vorash were not conquerors in the conventional sense. They did not bargain, they did not enslave, and they did not take prisoners. They consumed. Their ships were not built, but grown, titanic biomechanical construct that fed on metals, organics, and energy alike. Every world they struck was stripped bare, its atmosphere siphoned, its oceans boiled away, its people dissolved into nutrient paste to feed the swarm. It was not war as humanity understood it. It was ecological annihilation on a scale so vast that even the mightiest fleets found themselves overwhelmed. When the first confirmed Vorash attack reached Alliance base, it was not a skirmish. It was a massacre. The proud fleet of the Chorus Dominion, a power that had stood for 12,000 years, met the swarm of the Jerian expanse. 500 capital ships entered the battle. 12 limped away, their hulls half digested by acidic spore clouds, their crews either dead or driven mad by psychic assaults. Alliance emergency sessions declared the Vorash a Class Omega threat, extinction level for all known civilizations. Mobilization orders rang out across the galaxy, and fleets that had once been rivals now sailed under the same desperate banner. On Earth, news traveled slower, but the reality was the same. Humanity's limited FTL reach meant they were far from the initial attacks, watching the chaos unfold through intercepted transmissions and shaky footage smuggled by civilian traders. Captain Elias Reeves sat in the Odyssey's mess hall one evening, surrounded by his crew, as grainy holograms replayed the Jerian slaughter. The Vorash ships looked almost alive, massive, pulsing shapes with tendrils that lashed out to ensnare enemy vessels, dragging them into gaping moors lined with rows of mineral-shredding teeth. Energy weapons flayed uselessly against their organic armor, and the few missiles that detonated simply vanished into clouds of spore mist before reaching their targets. Most chilling of all was the realization that the Vorash didn't seem to recognize any difference between the species they devoured. Korith, Seraphai, Vaughn, it didn't matter. They stripped everything down to raw matter, as though all life was the same harvest. And yet, strangely, the Vorash were ignoring Sol space entirely. At first, the Alliance interpreted it as irrelevance. Why waste time on a primitive world when there were richer feeding grounds? But Dr. Lian Chen saw something else in the pattern. The Vorash seemed to target advanced technology, especially anything integrated into the Alliance's neural control and energy distribution systems. Humanity's ships, by contrast, ran on what the galaxy considered laughably outdated designs: nuclear drives, kinetic railguns, chemically insulated computers with no direct neural interfaces. That technological backwardness might just be humanity's one invisible shield. They can't adapt to what they can't digest, Leanne explained in a midnight strategy session, her eyes lit by the blue glow of the Odyssey's data screens. Their whole predatory system is built to hijack and reconfigure high-order tech. Our systems are too clumsy for them to infect. It was a bizarre twist of fate, the very thing that had led to humanity's humiliation, that the Council now offered them a chance to survive where greater powers were falling. Elias listened in silence, watching more reports scroll in. The fall of the Jathari Ark worlds, the burning of the Theran trade belt. Every victory the Vorash claimed seemed to push them deeper into Alliance territory. Entire empires were crumbling, their fleets unable to adapt fast enough. And still, the Odyssey and the human colonies remained untouched, far from the chaos. But Elias knew it wouldn't last. Eventually, the swarm would finish with the core worlds and turn outward. And when they did, the Sol system would be nothing more than another meal. That night, standing on the Odyssey's observation deck, Elias stared at the blackness beyond the stars. He thought about the council chamber, about the smirking delegates and their condescending verdict. They had called humanity primitive, irrelevant, a danger to themselves. And now, their mighty fleets were burning, their civilizations crumbling. The galaxy had spent centuries teaching humans their place. Soon, humanity would have the chance to return the favor, not out of revenge, but because if they didn't, there would be nothing left to fight for. Humanity strikes back. They came in ships that once blotted out suns, vessels that had been symbols of unshakable power, now limping wrecks trailing debris and wounded pride. The last surviving Alliance warships arrived in Sol space under emergency warp, their drives sputtering, their hulls scarred with the deep, corrosive burns left by Vorash acid spores. Where once their approach would have been a moment of political ceremony, a delegation of the galaxy's elite descending upon a primitive world, this time they came as beggars. The proud Saethai, the iron-willed Korith, the silver-winged Yulari, all reduced to hollow-eyed survivors who had watched their fleet shattered and their homeworld consumed. The Odyssey was ordered to rendezvous with the Alliance remnants in high Earth orbit. As Elias Reeves stood on the bridge, watching the alien vessels drift into position, the enormity of the reversal struck him. A year ago, these were the species who had mocked humanity for its lack of sophistication, its crude weaponry, its unrefined methods of war. Now they were here because the so-called primitives were the only ones left who could fight. And fight they would. The Council's emissary, or what was left of the Council, boarded the Odyssey. A Korith admiral named Shuril, once known for his disdain of human barbarism, stood before Elias in silence for a long moment before speaking. "We request your assistance," he said finally, his voice stripped of arrogance. "The swarm has adapted to everything we can throw at it except your technology. Your ships, your weapons, they are immune to their corruption. We need you." For Elias, the irony tasted sweet, but there was no time to savor it. The Vorash had breached the Hadrian Rift, a natural barrier of dense nebulae and gravitational anomalies that had once served as a strategic buffer. Beyond it lay the heart of Alliance space, and if the swarm reached the core worlds, there would be no stopping them before they spread into every habitable system in the galaxy. Humanity had been given a window, one slim, fleeting chance to strike a blow that could change the tide of the war. The core went out across Earth, Luna, and the scattered colonies. Shipyards that had been idle for decades roared to life. Orbital platforms cannibalized civilian freighters, atmospheric shuttles, even decommissioned warships from the old Earth conflicts, fusing them into ugly, powerful hybrids. Humans took what they had, mass drivers, nuclear torpedoes, electromagnetic pulse bombs, and reimagined them for deep space combat. It was inelegant, it was unpolished, and it was brutally effective. Every weapon was built with one goal, to kill something that had never faced anything like humanity before. In training simulators, human pilots drilled alongside the shell-shock veterans of other species, teaching them how to fight without relying on the fragile luxuries of advanced tech. "You aim here," one pilot explained to a Yulari ace, tracing the silhouette of a Vorash hive ship. "You want the kinetic slug to punch through the feeding ducts. Don't bother with their armor. It'll grow back faster than you can shoot it." It was a strange reversal of roles, the galaxy's most primitive species teaching its most advanced how to survive. When the fleet finally assembled, it was a sight unlike anything the galaxy had seen in generations. A patchwork armada, half built from the tattered remains of Alliance warships, half forged in Earth's brutal shipyards, gathered at the mouth of the Hadrian Rift. The humans had brought 50 warships, ugly, angular, bristling with railgun turrets and missile pods. Alongside them drifted the few hundred battered Alliance vessels still capable of fighting. Together, they prepared to face a Vorash swarm 3 times their number. The Battle of the Rift began in silence, the kind that exists only in the vacuum of space. Then came the first wave, a wall of living nightmares, their hulls pulsating with the feeding rhythm of some distant hive mind. The Alliance ships fought with what grace they had left, but it was the humans who struck the first decisive blow. At Elias's command, the Odyssey unleashed a spread of nuclear-tipped railgun slugs, each round punching clean through a Vorash carrier before detonating deep inside its organic core. The resulting chain reaction tore the massive creature apart from within, scattering bioluminescent gore across the rift like a grotesque firework. The message was clear. Humanity could kill them. For the first time since the war began, the swarm recoiled. The armada pressed forward, hammering them with weapons the Vorash had no answer for. Old human war doctrines, saturation bombardments, feigned retreats, overlapping kinetic fire, tore through the enemy lines. The rift ran red with a glow of burning Vorash carcasses. And when the battle finally ended, the unthinkable had happened. The swarm had been driven back. The galaxy had its first victory, and it had been won by the primitive species no one had wanted at the table.